All right, welcome to the Krueg Show on a Saturday morning as we come to you live the day before the NFC divisional playoffs. Niners and the Cowboys. Today on the Krueg Show to help us break it all down, the great Vish Kumaran. And Vish, before we get rolling, let me throw this out for our sponsors. Big thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics for being a sponsor of the show today. If you're an occupational therapist, an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice, and it can greatly benefit your patients. Now, Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. And I know you want more information. And for more information, go to their website, telmetrics.co, TELMETRIX.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a sponsor of the Krueg Show. All right. They get it
I
rolling.
might have to get some Telmetrics there, Larry. That was
Seriously.
quite the
you like that? You're intrigued.
Yeah.
You're intrigued.
I am intrigued. I am very much so.
All right, Vish, I just put out a poll question on Twitter, and I will read it straight to you.
Okay.
And we'll start right there. The question of the day is, where's my poll question? Come on. Where is it? Basically, here it is. What is the number one key to victory for the 49ers over the Cowboys? And this is what I gave the options to the Twitterverse. And I just put this out 30 minutes ago. So Niners pass defense, turnovers, the Niners pass rush, or Brock Purdy. And right now, what do you think would be leading? And what do you think you would go with out of those or any others that I didn't include?
Yeah, I think the answer is right there. It's right on. It's turnovers. It's the answer for any football game. And it's always the answer in this one too, because I think the other three answers kind of get looped into that turnovers answer, right? Like if Brock Purdy's a concern in this game, it's because you think he's going to turn it over. If the Niners pass rush plays really well, it's because you think it's going to, affect Dak Prescott and force him to turn the football over. And then what was the third? The Niners pass defense, right? If the Niners
pass rush, pass D, turnovers, and Brock.
Right. And then if the Niners pass rush plays well, you expect its pass defense to play well as well. So everything is kind of intertwined, but I think everything starts and ends with the turnovers. I'm assuming Brock Purdy is just number one on that count. I'm not so sure why, but it's just my guess. I know that Twitter is a pretty unpredictable place, so I can't really tell what the Tweeterverse is going for here. But to me, the answer is pretty simple. It's turnovers. Yeah.
The caretaker says, who's hyped? Yeah, who's hyped? Are you hyped? How do you get for playoff games, Vish? We've never sat and actually watched a game together. You're very analytical in the aftermath, but are you passionate, emotional, pumping your fist, yelling and screaming, or are you tweeting? Are you multitasking? Do you watch it with like a laptop on your lap and putting out thoughts and that kind of thing? What is your mode come kickoff?
So it's kind of changed. When I was a kid, it used to be full tension, like full on. I was so invested. I was so engrossed in the game too that I would just maybe see some things that the commentary might miss, or I'd be frustrated that other people didn't notice. And then somebody else would notice it one day later. And 15-year-old me would be like, well, I noticed that live, blah, blah, blah. I'd be thinking in my head, blah, 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 like that. Then I got into doing streaming and I started live tweeting during games. And I used to live tweet during games. I still do, but I do it at less frequency because I realized I wasn't watching the game live as much as I would like. I was, too busy on Twitter tweeting or too busy reading a reply that somebody wrote to me and wasting the enjoyment of this, which is watching the football game, not tweeting about it. So then I've become a lot slower on the Twitter. I tweet sometimes. I try to just avoid looking at replies. I try to avoid looking at Twitter during the game. I don't achieve it, but I try. And I used to be like very tense, but ever since I've had to start doing the streaming part of it and have what I consider to be a fair, objective, rational opinion about the game. I
Right.
feel like I can no longer be so emotionally wrapped up. So there is kind of the fandom in me still. Like there is still the butterflies in the stomach when the Niners play. There's still the frustration when a bad play happens. But I probably express that in a completely different way today than I did maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Now I take the game more for what it is, right? You know, before a bad play would happen to a player, I might curse that player in my head and be like, God, and I had to do one of those things. Now it's just like, yeah, these things happen. Um, really, how can the Niners respond? What really went wrong there? So it's more of that kind of a perspective, and it's different because I used to always watch the games with my dad too. And my dad is peak tension for watching these games. He gets really
Okay.
tensed. And then, you know, I went to
Is he a
college
Niner
and all of
fan?
that. He's huge. He's the reason I'm a Niners fan.
Okay.
And so I used to get like very into it, just as much into it as him. Then I had to learn to watch games without my dad. Um, you know, and it turns out when you're watching games with your friends, because I used to like football Sunday would just be me and my dad. That's just how it always was. And then I moved out. So now it's not just me and my dad on football Sunday. And you can't really react the way me and my dad react in the living room when you're in a public place watching a football game. So I definitely learned how to keep those emotions maybe a little more curtailed and treat the game a little bit differently. And now I stream right after too. So it's like, and streaming right after is rewarding, but I feel kind of out of place sometimes when I stream right after the game because I see so many of the other creators and they're able to pull out the emotion they have watching the game in the living room and express it in a positive, negative, whatever kind of way they have some sort of expression. And I guess I don't really have that ability to do that because now there's not really that much emotion in the living room, if that makes sense. It's just kind of watching the game and taking it for what it is and enjoying watching it and enjoying the rooting. So I come post game and I have a lot to say about what happened in the game, but I don't have a lot of, I guess, real emotional authenticity that's just flowing out of me. You know, I don't have this authentic emotion of positivity and I don't try to express it because I don't have it unless I really have it. And last week was one of the first times on stream. Like I really had it. I was like euphoric the entire stream. I didn't even know what I was saying half the time because I was just so happy they beat the Seahawks. And so, yeah, it's definitely a different experience. It's kind of weird to talk about it now because this is the first time I've kind of introspected on like what is my game watching experience and how that goes. But the number one thing always is just enjoying the football game for what it is. I'm back home today just so that me and my dad can watch the game tomorrow night and have that moment together. And that's really all it is for me at this point. It's a way we connect, and it's just something I love. I love football.
I think there's going to be a lot of Niner fans. If the Niners can get the win this weekend and win next weekend and go to the Super Bowl, I think there's going to be a lot of Niner fans who are like in my same spot who are it's like, you know what? There's one way to watch it, the Super Bowl, when you're just like maybe have a little wager on it, but you don't have your team in it. And there's a totally
Right.
different way you watch it when it's your team. And I don't know that I want to be around lots of people who are like, oh, shut up. I want to hear this commercial about Tostitos. You know, it's like, no, I don't want that.
Right.
Before we get into
I'm the same way. I could never do the Super Bowl party, all of that. One, because I don't look, this is a me problem too, but I don't like sitting in that public space and I hear like very wrong things being said about the game. And I just have to kind of shut my mouth and not be argumentative in that moment, obviously, and not be like a party pooper by saying you're wrong or whatever. And two,
we should talk about that sometime. We should do like a stream on like what if your most difficult watching moments in history, because my wife dragged me to a party one time with people I didn't know.
Right.
And they were like friends of our kids, right?
Oh God.
And so there was like, hey, they're really into the Steelers and it's Steelers Packers going for the Super Bowl. Why don't we go over there? They invited us to a Super Bowl party. I'm like, oh. She's like, what? She's like, you're so antisocial. She's like, mad at me. I'm like, no, it's not that I'm antisocial. I got money on Green Bay. And And she's like, well, you can't watch it with people who are Pittsburgh fans just because you have money on Green Bay. I'm like, yeah, but I got kind of a lot of money on Green Bay, so it's
Yeah.
more than that. So we go into this house. I
Yeah.
swear to you, it was Heinz Field West.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
I've never seen more. There was more.
Steelers paraphernalia everywhere.
Everybody in the entire house had a Steeler jersey on. There were people who weren't even married any longer who were rejoining just because they share the Steelers. You had people, the couch that we sat on had a Steelers blanket over it. I mean, everything was Steelers. This was like the hardest of hardcore Steeler family I've ever seen. And I just sat there and they're like, oh, you're a sports talk show. You should have a lot of passion for this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty low key because I knew I'm going to be passionate when you guys lose. And sure enough, Green Bay beat Pittsburgh and they were distraught.
Yeah.
I mean, distraught. And we're sitting there and I'm like thrilled because I just won a sizable amount of money. And I'm like trying to pretend that I'm not super excited. And it was just hell on earth. And as we're walking to the car, I said to my wife, I said, honey, we're never getting invited back, right? And she's like, oh, shut up. We'll be invited back. I go, no, we're never going to be invited back. And she's like, we didn't say anything wrong. I go, I know we didn't say anything wrong, but we are synonymous with losing
one of the
Super
worst
Bowl
moments of their lives. Yeah.
With the worst moment of their football watching life. And
right.
The Steelers don't lose Super Bowls typically. I mean, they lost to Dallas, but they don't lose typically. So
have you been invited again?
Never. We've never been there.
Okay.
Never back.
See, that one isn't that bad, Larry. Like for me, I guess I've been I grew up this way just because my dad is. One thing people don't know about him is he's as into it in a different type of way as me. So he's not as into kind of the technical side of football and those kinds of things. That's a little too much for him. But he's as into it in the sense that he wakes up in the morning with his cup of coffee and he's reading all Niners news, Niners tweets, whatever. He's seen it in the middle of the day. He knows what's happening around the league. And if you think my memory is good, my dad's is probably better. And that's basically me saying, because he's got 55, 56 years of things to remember, 57 almost now. And I have only 23 years of things to remember in my head. And so he remembers like everything.
It all does
he remembers
blur
what
together.
People say, and all of that. And so he likes watching the game in silence. He likes just he and I sitting there.
No announcers?
We don't do it. Depends on the announcer. So for example, we watched the game on mute last week because we hate Daryl Johnston.
Mm-hmm. Cowboy.
Yeah, he's unbearable. But we'll watch the game with sound, but we don't talk much during the game. We don't like when people talk during the game. He doesn't like it. I don't know how I feel about it, but he's kind of raised me to feel like, God damn, shut up. I'm trying to watch the game. Right. So it's really interesting because this is a topic. It's funny you bring it up, but yeah, it could go deeper and deeper and just different experiences. But for me, in general, that football watching Sunday, I like it just being me. I know that can sound antisocial for some people, but for me, this is my hobby. This is my enjoyment. And sometimes for me to get completely the fulfillment of an NFL Sunday, it just includes me, my couch, my TV, my computer, my phone, and just taking it all in.
That's awesome, man. JK510 throws an interesting comment. I want to talk about the matchup, but this is an interesting one. He says, good morning, Larry. Good morning, Vish. When you both have a chance, what are your thoughts on Mike Silver's report about Brock Purdy being the quarterback of the future and that it's already decided within the organization? And, I saw a couple people, Rob Guerrero, I think put out, I thought the Niners didn't have any leaks.
Right.
And by the way, our thoughts go to Rob because I saw that he's no longer with Niner Nation, and I feel bad for him because he's an outstanding 49er content creator, and I hope he finds his path and finds his way on that. That's just the business and the way it is. It's just a tough biz. But what do you think of this report? One, we'll talk about the first thing first, the leak, the fact that it's out there. And that the Niners are kind of priding themselves on, hey, we don't leak anything. And yet, There's multiple reporters out there who are saying that this has been announced to them. The other side of this, I think, is kind of funny in that I know that Brock Purdy's the quarterback of the future and of the quarterback of next year, and I didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
So how do I know that? Because
Right.
I've got two eyes. I've got this eye and I've got this eye, and I've watched him, and he's better than Garoppolo, and he's way better than Trey. So guess what? He's your guy. So
Yeah.
I don't need Shanny or Lynch or Guido or anybody else to whisper to me, "Hey,
Prague.
Blair, hey, Purdy's the guy." I know he's the guy. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess it's nice that Silver clarified this, but the same way I knew that Purdy was making the roster, I know that he's the quarterback of the future. So I don't think it's a huge revelation, but what do you think of the two elements of this? The leak and the official, let's say, if you want to call this the official anointing of Purdy as the starter for next year.
Yeah, so I think first of all, a lot of it has to do with sensitivity, right? Anytime, and this is why for me, I just do not like the business. But and that's personally why I just can't ever seeing myself get into it. But I don't like in general the ad hominem attacks that go on to sports reporters just because they report something you don't like. And that's the first part of it, right? The sensitivity aspect of it is always, well, if they say something that disagrees, they say something I don't like. He thought it was Mac Jones. That's the new attack from any Niners fans to anybody, right? And I don't think that's exactly fair. And then the second part of it is the Niners don't leak, and yet this information got out to Mike Silver at all. I think some of it is just the word choice, right? I think people immediately think that not leaking is synonymous with not having conversations with anybody outside of the conversation or anybody outside of the organization. That's objectively false. The Niners coaches, Niners players, Niners front office brass, they talk all the time. They're friends with half the media members. John Lynch is an ex-media member. Fox reports half the things on the 49ers. Peter Schrager, because he was the sideline reporter on John Lynch and Kevin Burkhardt's crew, right? Colin Cowherd, who used to interview John Lynch quite a bit when he was working at Fox. These guys constantly have inside scoops. And Mike Silver has been covering Mike Shanahan for so long. I'm sure they have a long-standing relationship. I'm sure he has a long-standing relationship with, some of the higher-up people within the 49ers organization that are maybe lesser known from a football perspective, but that take the care of the day-to-day operations in certain types of way. I'm sure he has relationships. And so they might have a casual conversation about this, right? And the most important thing is the second part you said. The reason this conversation is so open and the reason he's reporting it is because it's pretty much become obvious to everybody who's looking at it from a football perspective that this is looking like what the move is going to be. Now, I have been very particular that I don't want to have this conversation today because I think it's a great conversation to have in the offseason, and I think it'll work itself out this offseason. I think there's too many variables still unknown with the health of Trey Lance. And then, of course, Brock Purdy, what happens to him after this season finishes, how he goes into the offseason, how Trey Lance comes into the offseason. There's a bunch of different details there. And that's where, when I look at it, Larry, like, sure, Mike Silver reported it. He reported it officially by sourcing it from somebody within the Niners organization. But anybody who's observing Niners football closely right now probably feels like, in terms of what is the most prudent move at quarterback for the Niners moving forward, this feels like the case right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's outplayed those guys. So, and, he's healthy and they're winning playoff games.
Right.
So I said it at the beginning of the year and people scoffed when I said it. And I literally said this in July. I said the quarterback of the future is the quarterback who's standing in the winner's circle when they get that 6th Lombardi.
Right.
That's the quarterback of the future. That could be Trey. That could be Jimmy. That could be Brock. That's the quarterback of the future.
Right.
And in this case, it looks like if it's going to happen, it's going to be Brock, possibly. Though there is reports that Jimmy could be back as the backup in the NFC Championship game if the Niners can move on. Lockerius makes a donation. Larry the Mad Genius, Vish the Young Prodigy. Oh, look at
It's
that.
nice of him
So
to
he's
say.
Skywalker, and I'm I'm Yoda or something, or I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Could be Obi-Wan.
But I think I'd much rather be Obi-Wan than Yoda. I mean,
Really? Okay.
Yoda was an ugly mother. All right,
Oh,
let's talk a
that's
little bit.
personal. That's personal, Larry.
Sorry, Yoda. Sorry, but yeah, that's how I feel. All right, let's talk about the matchup. I think the number one thing the Niners need to do to win is their D line needs to beat the Cowboy O line. There will not be Jason Peters. He is out. That means the rookie from Tulsa, who's been awesome, Tyler Smith, is likely going to start at left tackle. Smith has got a lot of run at left tackle, folks. So it's not like, oh my God,
And he's played
this
well.
is some nightmare.
He's played very well, yeah.
He's played very well. But according to pass block win rate, which I think is a really interesting stat, collectively and individually, Tyler Smith ranks 62 out of 64 pass blocking offensive tackles in win rate. He's 62 out of 64 tackles in ESPN's stat, pass block win rate. He's number one in the NFL in holding penalties this season with 13. And now he's going to face Nick Bosa, the defensive player of the year. Also, the move now moves Connor McGovern into left guard. So, he's been playing a little fullback. So now that's off the table. But to me, how do you see the matchup of the Niner D-line against this Cowboy offensive line? It's a big offensive line. Zach Martin's the star. He's at right guard. But this Tyler Smith out of Tulsa, I loved him in the lead up to the draft. And he's played incredible. Guard, tackle, he's got balance, he's got long arms, he's got power. He's nice. He's a nice player. I don't care what the stats say. But he does have a bunch of holding penalties. Obviously, he leads the league. How do you see Niners D-line, Cowboys O-line?
Yeah, so the Cowboys offensive line I actually think is one of the most underrated units in the entire NFL, right? Like, I think it's one of those units that people don't realize it's good. Tyron Smith is on his last legs, but they've got a first ballot Hall of Famer who's, to me, nearing himself into the conversation when we talk about the greatest guards in the history of football.
Right.
Zach Martin is somewhere there. That center from Wisconsin, that's Travis Frederick's replacement, Biad. I can never pronounce his name. Tyler. I'm going to call him Tyler. Tyler has played well. Tyler Smith has played very well too both at left guard when Jason Peters has played left tackle in that short time, which the Cowboys have maintained is their best offensive line combination. And he's played well at left tackle. I don't know those stats. I've seen them, but I don't exactly know. I wish I had spent some time to go into the ins and outs of how that pass block win rate was actually calculated for Tyler Smith, but I don't think it's indicative of the rookie season he's had. The holding penalties are a constant for him. They were his number one Achilles heel at Tulsa, and now they're probably his biggest Achilles heel too as a rookie in Dallas. The one thing I will say about them is that the holding penalties were not called at all on wildcard weekend. There was a massive reduction in calling holding. They were not really calling them unless it really, really affected a play. And so when I see all of that, I just wonder ultimately, whether they're going to call them. And if I'm Kyle Shanahan, he's probably going to be in the officials' ears before the game and say, watch for holding. Make sure you call holding. But I also know, I think the official crew is Bill Vinovich's crew. Right. And they're notorious for not throwing flags. They just let the game move on. He's always rated as the highest rated official almost every year religiously. He is the one who blew the NFC Championship game, by the way. The Rams-Seahawks blown call was Bill Vinovich. He did referee the 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl, for anybody who's wondering. So he went from a year after having the biggest blown call in NFL history to reffing the Super Bowl. Kind of tells you where the NFL is with some of this stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But he will be the referee. They're probably going to swallow their whistle a lot. I ultimately think that the matchup isn't going to be as much Nick Bosa centric. It's going to be how much can you get from Jordan Willis and Charles Omenihu, because they were the difference when you look back a year ago, right? When you look at the Niners defense a year ago, the score was 23-17 of that football game, but Jimmy Garoppolo really allowed the Cowboys to get back into the game with a stupid interception when it was 23-7. The Niners were
By the way,
blowing
the
them
second
out.
half, you want to hear
Right.
second half Jimmy? Here's second half Jimmy stats last year against Dallas. 5 of 11, so 45% completion percentage for 39 yards, no touchdowns, the one pick that you just referenced, and a passer rating of 16.8.
Yeah.
That was ugly.
Yeah. And he got hurt. He got hurt. So let's preface that and give him that disclaimer. But he also played horribly, right? The big miss to Ayuk on the blaze out. Everybody remembers that. He overshot him. He was wide open. And then the interception, which really let Dallas come back into the game, right? The subsequent play, I think, after that interception was slot fade to Amari Cooper against K'Wan Williams at 23-14 ball game. And all of a sudden, Dallas was having an opportunity when, up till that interception, Dallas was completely out of it. They were getting nothing done on offense, and they were down 3 scores. It was a bad game for them. They were not, or 2 scores. They were not really, or 3 scores. Yeah. They were not really in a position to win that game until he threw that interception. And so when you look at those type of details, why did the Niners get there, right? Because we remember Nick Bosa didn't play the second half. It was because Jordan Willis and Charles Omenihu pretty much ate Tyron Smith for breakfast in that game at Dallas last year. And if they can play that well again, because I think for the interior guys, it's going to be a tough matchup, especially for Armstead if he has to line up in front of Zach Martin. Armstead is a mammoth. He's a terrific football player, but we know what Zach Martin is. He's first ballot Hall of Famer. And so I think it's going to be imperative that Ebukam and Omenihu and Jordan Willis, who all played well a year ago without Nick Bosa, played very, very well on the other side of Nick Bosa this year. Because to me, that's going to be where we decide whether the 49ers defensive line ultimately dominates this game. Because this is going to be 1, 2, or 3 in terms of the best offensive line they've faced, right? The interior is probably as good as Kansas City, which is the best interior they've placed. The tackles are better than Kansas City. Orlando Brown had a mess of a year. So Kansas City's tackles aren't very good. And then the other one is the Saints, right? And I would say this
I thought the Falcons had a really good line.
Right, the Falcons too. A little different situation, right? Because the Falcons don't give you a lot of opportunities to rush the passer in general, especially when they had Mariota at quarterback, because they don't throw. They run the football more than 50% of the time with him. So that was kind of the case. So it's a little bit different, but you're right. It is going to be with the Saints, Falcons, Chiefs, only Chiefs interior offensive line amongst the best they've played.
Lockeria says, mind of Yoda, looks of a young Obi-Wan. How about this one?
There you
Sean
go.
Wilford says, Larry is Darth Vader. Darth Vader? I don't know. I don't know, man. But Sean Wilford's bringing hot takes here. Look at this one. Sean Wilford, thumbs down for Vish, but I love – come on, man. Vish is the man. Vish is the man. Wilford, Vish is the reason there's 500 people here in the room.
I'm so angry
listening
right now.
Closely.
This is so personal.
Joe Young says, all week, this national media sounded desperate for the Cowboys to win. Wish they'd realized that the Niners are the most popular team on the West Coast. All right. So I say the Niner defensive front is the key element. And why? Because to me, it's like, can the Niner defensive front, whether they send 3, 4, 5, or 6, can they get home, put pressure on Dak, move him off the spot, bother him so that he can't survey the field and have all day to let CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, and Michael Gallup work themselves open down the field against the Niners pass D, which is ranked, I think, 20th in the NFL. But I was looking at some of the numbers on CeeDee Lamb, and these are kind of interesting. The Cowboys, Vish, move CD all over the formation.
Right.
So I don't know if the Niners can shadow him with Charvarius. Here are the numbers. Lamb lines up in the slot 47.4% of the snaps. He had 59 catches, 826 yards, and 2 touchdowns out of the slot. Outside, he lines up 45.8% of the snaps. He had 43 catches, but 5 touchdowns. In line, he was 6.1% and scored 1 touchdown. And then they've lined him up in the backfield 0.7% of the snaps this year. And he does have a touchdown out of the backfield. That all being said, how concerned are you about Gallup and CD against Lenore and Charvarius? I mean, the Niners, I would feel so much better. I was watching the Niners-Cowboys game from last year, and the one thing that I noticed that made me go, ugh, was that the Niners had Emmanuel Mosley. and they don't
Right.
have Emmanuel Mosley now.
Right.
And Mosley's great. So can the Niner corners, Lenore, who may have really outplayed Charvarius last week, and Charvarius, who was brought in as the big free agent signing, can these guys turn off Gallup and Lamb's water? Or is Dallas going up top? And at the end of this game, we're going to be talking about corners in the draft and corners in free agency and how the Niners need to upgrade their corners and blah, 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 blah. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think the Niners corners can match up. I think it's completely different conversation, right? Because you brought up where CeeDee Lamb lines up. He lines up everywhere. To me, he's best in the slot. He's a very crafty, sound route runner. He's very physical. He's got great hands. To me, he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. There's no question. He's awesome after the catch. I think the most underrated thing about CeeDee Lamb is how good he is after the catch. I don't think it gets talked about enough. But I don't know if this matchup is really going to be about the Niners corners versus these Dallas receivers necessarily. Because to me, when I look at Dak, and I think very highly of Dak, actually, I think he is a top 10 quarterback. I think some of the interceptions this year were, you look at the number and 15 interceptions is crazy, but a lot of those interceptions were on those receivers, balls bouncing off their hands, going straight into the other team's hands, and it affected Dak, right? And the best estimation of Dak's 15 interceptions not necessarily being the perfect example of what type of quarterback he is that he was not top 10 in turnover-worthy play percentage this year, which tells you that he's not necessarily throwing the ball in harm's way that much compared to the rest of the league. It just happened that they were catching a lot of those interceptions versus him. But the thing to me with Dak that's always been the case is I feel like he's so precise and he plays mentally such a strong game that so much of, to me, Dak is, can he get you pre-snap and do the X's and O's make sense for Dak? And I think if you put Dak in a gritty, grinded out game where the pitcher isn't as muddy, things aren't necessarily as open on time and on schedule, and you have people around him, you can kind of force him to struggle because, to me, his number one asset is his mind. And you don't give him the advantage of knowing where the ball should go pre-snap, and you don't let him drop back and be clean and see things clearly, then it starts to affect, to me, his post-snap process and what he does. Because if you let him get in a rhythm and start to go, he can really go. And to me, all of that, to me, with Dallas stems from their running game. When they run the football, and for them, they're able to run the football anybody. It's how committed are they to running the football. And when they're committed to running the football, it sets up Dak to start getting in these drop back pass situations, knowing that you're so scared of the run that you're going to be, in these fronts, these coverages, and he starts to pick you apart. And it's very surgical, and that's what he kind of did to Tampa Bay. So my number one concern actually is not CeeDee Lamb. It's not the 49ers corners. It's the 49ers safeties and coming up and fitting in the alley versus Tony Pollard. Because Tony Pollard, to me, was not a factor last year. He is the biggest change in Dallas from last year to this year. He is the explosive.
They had him last year, but they just didn't use a bigger role.
Yeah. Right. He is the explosive element to their football team. It's not him. It's not CeeDee Lamb, It's not Zeke Elliott. It's not Michael Gallup. Their big play guy is Tony Pollard, and they look to get big plays in the run game. And the one thing about the Niners, they have given up explosives in the run game. And in particular, it's been Hufanga. When he's had to come down and tackle in the alley, he struggled. And the difference last year to this year is Gibson and Hufanga don't run anybody down. Tart and Ward had the kind of foot speed to be able to run people down if you made a mistake. They don't run anybody down. And that's why the Niners are, top 10 in explosives given up, right? Which is a little different from last year. Now they're causing turnovers. And so to me, if we're talking about, hey, what is my biggest question about the 49ers in this game? It's, well, I think their run defense is going to be good for the most part. But the one where Dallas gets you and you get a little bit of breakdown, can you keep that to 15, 20 yards, or do you let Tony Pollard go for 80? Because if you let him go for 80 and they get a one-play touchdown and you give Dallas explosives, I think Dallas will struggle actually to move the ball and reticulate the ball up the field slowly and slow and steady, play after play after play, because it's just very tough to execute against this defense. And this defensive line is so good, they will cause enough negative plays where if you get into 1st and 15, you're in 2nd and 20, it's really hard to dig out of that hole against the Niners defense. But if you get a 1st and 10 run from Tony Pollard that goes 80 because Hufanga doesn't fill in the alley correctly, this was a problem earlier in the season, right? It was a problem versus Atlanta. He missed CMC 2 times in the alley that CMC scored when he was still playing in Carolina, a game that they blew them out. There were a few other examples of this that I could go back and pull up. So to me, that is actually the number one concern. It's not as much on the outside. What are the Niners corners, Niners receivers going to do? Because to me, Dallas's offense is all about that run game. It starts with that run game. And can you make tackles in when Dallas does get things right in the run game? Because if you miss Tony Pollard, he's gone. Nobody's catching him.
Yeah, no, he's a big play guy. Big play guy for sure. Tommy Huxley makes a donation. Vish is the GOAT. Larry is the Lion King. There you go. All right, we'll take that.
That makes me feel some type of way because doesn't the GOAT get eaten in the Lion King?
SLLL says Kyle owns McCarthy. I do feel better that the 49ers have the better coach.
Right.
In fact, I really believe this could be the very end of the Mike McCarthy era, especially if the Niners really put one on him. Now, let's flip the card. We've talked about the Niners defense going against the Cowboys offense, and we'll get more into that. But let's talk about the Niners offense for a second. I think this is really an interesting matchup. Last week, the Niners dominated doing what they do, which is 21 personnel. Right. 2 backs, 1 tight end. It's a dying personnel grouping in the NFL with the innovation of the spread. Yeah. Fullbacks are not universally used throughout the league. There's not a lot of 21 personnel usage in the league today.
And so why is this a bad matchup for Dallas, Larry? What does Dallas historically do? What is their base defense under Dan Quinn? They play Jaron Kearse. They play the 3 safeties. They play with the big nickel.
Right.
And the Niners' 21 personnel is true 21 personnel, right? Because Juszczyk is really a true fullback in terms of his size, and their offensive line is big, and their tight end is also big with Kittle. So it is a true 21 personnel, and that's where I'm actually look, unless Purdy finally has a game where he just completely looks fish out of water, loses his poise and whatever, I don't like the matchup for Dallas's defense at all versus this offense. Dallas's defense, to me, preys on negative plays and getting you an obvious pass. And when they get you an obvious pass, Micah Parsons, you're not stopping him. Nobody's stopping him. And once they get you,
Micah
it's not
Parsons
just him.
the perfect solution to Brock Purdy's escapability?
Maybe, but how are you going to get them out of obvious pass, right? First down, 21 personnel. Okay, you match with base. Jaron Kearse is your big nickel. Do you have enough weight on the defensive line? Because their defensive line is small too, right? They moved Micah Parsons to defensive end. They couldn't stop the run versus anybody. They moved him back to the off-ball linebacker position because it helped them in base. It also gave them more size up front versus the run. Other than Tank Lawrence, who to me is like excellent against the run, their defensive line just lacks size, right?
Hankins is a house.
Are gap shooters.
Hankins is a house, but he's
totally
immobile.
He's the one house. He's the one house. Right? There's nobody behind him too. Gallimore is hurt, but these other guys are all smaller defensive tackles. They're looking to shoot gaps and they're looking to rush the passer. Which is great, right? It's great. Yes, Osa too, for sure. Which is great. But versus this offense that can actually line up in 21 personnel every first and second down and have a true run pass option because of how versatile those threats are on the ball, to me, that is actually a very bad matchup for Dallas. And so when I look at it, on first and second down, the Niners really should dominate this game. And on third down, you could make the argument, well, Dan Quinn will be diverse. He's going to blitz. He's going to do a lot of exotic things. And Dorrance Armstrong, Tank Lawrence, Micah Parsons, all these guys are going to eat. They're going to collapse the pocket. They're going to affect Brock Purdy. They're going to affect his mobility. I agree with all of those points. I think Dallas's defense is very good. But I think it's a horrible matchup for them when you look at the first and second down and you look at, well, are they going to run the football and how the 49ers are going to run the football? Because that big nickel and the lack of size on the defensive line is a bad matchup for Dallas. It is.
We'll get to Dallas's approach to Purdy, but I think this is interesting on the 21 personnel. Cowboys defense has faced 21 personnel. Guess how many snaps this year? If you had to guess.
A lot.
27 snaps all year against 21 personnel.
Jeez.
It's the lowest rate in the entire NFL. The Niners passing out of 21 personnel against nickel, as you said, the Cowboys' prevalent defense against 21 personnel typically is probably still going to be to stay with their big nickel. Against passing out of 21 personnel against nickel defenses this year, the Niners are 42 of 51 for 505 yards, 10.8 yards per attempt. So, I mean, to me, that's major advantage 49ers. Elite Archer 23 donates and says, Kyle's inability to keep leads in big games is not talked about enough. I'm not worried about the players. Kyle is the liability. I think that has much more to do with Kyle's quarterbacks in these games.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Than Kyle himself. But I want to get to Brock Purdy because since Brock Purdy took over, that was week 13, and this includes last week against Seattle. The Niners are averaging 35.6 points per game. Now, Dallas is also averaging about 31 a game over that span, so they're scoring points as well. So I could see you could argue that there could be a shootout coming here. But the interesting thing to me is that Brock Purdy leads the NFL in passer rating when he's not being blitzed. He's got a passer rating of 113.6. When he is being blitzed, he's 11th in passer rating at 103.6. I expect Dallas to bring 5-man pressures, 6-man pressures. Dallas, by the way, blitzes this year at the 13th highest rate in the NFL. I expect they'll blitz even more than normal in this game. I think that they'll believe that this is their solution to young Brock Purdy. Send the house.
It's actually not the solution, right?
I don't think it is either.
Brock Purdy has shown, right? By blitzing, you give Brock Purdy answers. And that's what Brock Purdy needs, right? Because he's at a physical disadvantage, even compared to the quarterback on the other side. First off, Dak Prescott's size, big difference. It makes a big difference. I promise it makes a big difference. Size, as Chris Sims always says, size is a skill. It's a skill. Then, of course, Dak has a stronger arm. He's probably the more consistent thrower, especially down the field. But if you give Brock Purdy pre-snap answers by saying, well, we're bringing 5, bringing 6, you got to be hot, you know where to go, he's going to eat you alive. We saw, to me, to this day, the most impressive game Brock Purdy has played is when he had to come in relief in a 7-3 football game for Jimmy Garoppolo against a Miami team at the time, which was dominating. It was running through a lot of people. I think they had won 5 straight. That Miami team was very good. And Miami kind of changed
brought
the defense,
the house.
Right? They zero pressured him how many times in that game?
At least
he
10.
had answers. He knew where to go with the football, and he was smart and consistent, and he knew what to do. And so to me, this is actually the Brock Purdy answer is what the Niners defense do. Get pressure with 4, sit back and play zone, play consistent, play smart, and make him make big-time throws into tight windows from contested pockets. And that's, to me, I talked about this last time you and I streamed together. That's the question for any quarterback. Can they do that? Because if they can do that, they're a franchise quarterback. And we'll see with Brock Purdy if he can do that. But to me, 5-man, 6-man pressures, if you do that, Shanahan is going to have answers, and so will Brock Purdy.
A couple things going here. One, I think the Niners are going to have a run-heavy scheme. I really believe that. George Kittle, I stood 3 feet away from him in the locker room. They were asking him, what's the game plan? He says, we're going to play 49er football and run the ball. Okay, Packers ran for 207 on 39 carries against Dallas earlier this year in the overtime game. 5-3 a carry for Green Bay. Jaguars with Etienne ran 7.1 a carry against Dallas. The Niners gutted Dallas in the first half last year in the playoffs in their place by running the football right down their throat. Oh, wait a second. Hold on a second. Maybe could we take the Javier Mendez stream out of the that would be really good if we could.
A little crossover here.
Habib is coming on.
Maybe we could.
Myself, but that's okay.
Is Islam coming on?
I don't know who's coming on, but they're not coming on in the middle of our stream. Okay. The great Len Dempsey in the house. And for a moment. All right. But as far as the 49ers, I expect the Niners to run the ball a lot at the Cowboys and have success doing it. And they ran it at him last year and they had a big lead in the first half. I think they'll run it at him again and have a lot of success.
Yep.
But I was watching the old Niners Cowboys 92 NFC Championship game when Dallas came here and beat the 94, I should say, when the Niners finally got over on Dallas after Dallas beat them here in San Francisco in 92, beat them there in the NFC Championship in 93. 94, the NFC Championship was here. And Dallas had an awesome team, and Steve Young did something to neutralize the amazing pursuit and pass rush of one of the greatest Hall of Fame pass rushers of his day there in Charles Haley. And now you get another one, because I think Parsons is a Canton type player as well. And what did Steve Young do to Haley? And it worked. He used his pursuit and pass rush aggressiveness against him, and he went big on the bootleg game. And Randall Riley here in the chat says play action pass and bootleg.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, what does Brock do exceptionally well? He runs the bootleg game and the play action pass game to near perfection. And to me, I would like to see them I'd like to see them run the bootleg game right at Parsons and let him take 3 steps into the backfield and then bootleg right off of him into a big play. And just throw in behind him, run at him, don't run away. He's got unbelievable pursuit skills. So you could try running away, but I don't think that's going to work. I think you'd have a better chance of clipping him a little bit and running at him. To me, the bootleg to neutralize Parsons, and almost like a Pete Carrill Princeton basketball team from years ago. You know what? They want to over pursue on the wings. We'll slip back door all day.
Right.
And I think that Purdy is poised enough to make that initial fake and then pass behind the over pursuit.
Yeah,
I think it could lead to some huge plays.
And that's the other difference, right? It's great that this was brought up, because that's the other difference, right? Because that's really what the majority of their pass game is going to be. And that's something they haven't really been able to do with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, because he's not good at the under center play action game. That's not his strength. He is not very good at it. He didn't do it in college. He had to write "see the safeties" on his armband in 2018 training camp. Didn't know the possessive of safeties and the plural of safeties are different. That's okay, Jimmy. We forgive you. But Purdy has brought that element to this offense that's made it a little more traditional Shanahan, which is why they're able to operate out of this 21 personnel, because they can play action and pass you to death. They can play pass, they can naked, bootleg. It's all available. It's all available for them when they're able to run the football well, which I think they'll be able to do. I thought you brought up a great point going back to the 94 game and all of that. I think the last part of this, to me, and this is kind of the summation of this game, is that I also think there's a fragility to Dallas. To me, you get on Dallas early, you get ahead of them. I don't necessarily look at their players, because I don't think Dak Prescott's really a front runner. To me, he's a guy that leaves it all in the field and he competes his butt off. Like, I have a lot of respect for him. But I do think because of Jerry, the way things are, you said Mike McCarthy is gone. Like, to me, Dallas in a negative situation, I don't know if they have that deep backbone, because, Mike McCarthy at the end of the day, what his job gets talked about every week. And he's made the playoffs in both his years as the coach of the Cowboys. And Jerry's always saying something and something else and this and that. And I think because of that, there is a fragility to Dallas. And I think the Niners' backbone and the Niners' physicality and the Niners' intangibles are going to actually make a difference. And I hate talking about those kinds of things, because I think a lot of times they're overrated and overstated. But to me, there's something about Dallas. You look at some of their wins this year, right? The way they beat Minnesota, the way they did some of those things, you would have to look at Dallas and be like, yeah, they're easily one of the 2, 3, 4, 5 best teams in the NFL. Nobody really looks at them that way, because there's also that 27-10 lead that they blew versus Jacksonville, and Jacksonville came back and beat them. They also had a couple of that game versus Houston, which was disgusting. The last game of the regular season against Washington, what was that? Like, what was that?
Just
and
kind
so
of a
when
no-show.
And yeah, when you put in, when you
26-6,
have those games, to me, when you have those games over the course of the season, it's very difficult to trust, because, yeah, the game against Tampa, that was phenomenal. It was just like the Minnesota game, right? It was full on. It was a tour de force. It was dominant on offense, dominant on defense, dominant on special teams, as good as it gets. But to me, there's something about Dallas where that same team can do that and also do what they did at Washington. And then you add in the attrition. To me, Dallas is a team that's waiting to quit. They've played 4 straight games on the road. They've had to, travel. The Niners have been sitting at home. Now they have to come cross-country on a short week after winning an emotionally very charged game, right? Their first road playoff win in 30 years. They have to do that, and they have to come back and play at San Francisco. To me, if the Niners jump ahead of them the way they did last year, they get that quick 10-0. it could be all she wrote for Dallas. And that's why I'm going to come in and make my prediction, because I know that's what you're ultimately getting to. And I'm picking the 49ers to win 34-20. I don't usually do this, but to me, I just look at Dallas and I feel like situationally there's so many things working against them, let alone I think there's parts of this matchup that just don't make sense. And it's really first and second down. And when I look at their defense, I think their defense can get worn out. I think the Niners offense is going to wear their defense out. Their lack of size really is the number one thing with the Dallas Cowboys defense. As good as it is, they don't have enough size on the interior of their defensive line, and that will affect them in this football game. The Niners are winning 34-20, in my opinion.
A couple last ones before we let you go. Niners are 11-0 since they made the Christian McCaffrey trade, or since McCaffrey played, and they've averaged 31 a game since he moved into the starting lineup after the Chiefs game. Who's the bigger push for this offense's resurgence, Brock or Christian?
I'm going to have to go with Purdy.
Okay.
It is Christian McCaffrey in a lot of ways, right? Garoppolo was playing the best football of his career, but Purdy's aggressiveness, better accuracy than Garoppolo, and then just better understanding of where to go with the ball, I think has unlocked different things, and I think it's unlocked different things in Shanahan. Shanahan said it point blank. He didn't say it about Garoppolo, but he said that because of how Purdy is, it allows him to call the game just based on what he thinks is the right call in every situation. And that says a lot about Purdy because that means he trusts him. And the one thing we know about Garoppolo with the way he called the games with Garoppolo is he was never sure when that guy was going to ruin it for him. That's how he called the game. It's that simple. He was always scared that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to ruin it for him because he did ruin it for him twice. To be honest, he ruined it for him in the 19 Super Bowl and he ruined it for him last year. So even though Garoppolo was a good player, right, we can mince and we can pick at him and we do it all the time. But at the end of the day, with the 49ers, he was successful. He was a good player. There's no doubt about it. I think it's just unlocked a different level of confidence in Shanahan, which has unlocked a different level of confidence in this offense. Because even with Christian McCaffrey, the initial parts of Christian McCaffrey, this offense wasn't like this until Brock Purdy came in. And then there were injuries too, right? Brock Purdy played without Debo for a long period of time. Brock Purdy played without Aaron Banks for a week. Brock Purdy played without different guys. Different guys were banged up. All of that, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. McCaffrey himself was banged up for a while in the middle.
I think it's Purdy for sure. Let me hit a couple of these chats, and then I got one last one on your way out the door. 2.0 makes a donation. I feel very confident that Jacksonville covers and may even win this game. Feel confident in Buffalo and Philly winning. This Niners game, though, I have no clue, and I think it'll be 100% determined by turnovers. That one is interesting, and we've got this one. My God, Lockerius makes a donation. My God, Vish. Sorry, Larry. Vish is Yoda. Vish is not Yoda.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that I know the one picture of me that's actually like kind of circulated on social media that people have seen is me standing next to Jason Ponte. He's 6'5", but I'm 5'11". I'm 5'11". I like to call myself 6 foot, but I'm actually 5'11". So this makes
You're not 5'5". Enough of
no,
this.
I'm not Yoda. I'm not Yoda.
Not Yoda.
That's all.
Damn it.
That's all I'm trying to say. I've been short my whole life. I was a very late grower. So I went from like 5'4" to 5'10".
You're like David Robinson going to the Naval Academy.
Right, except I didn't grow from 6'1" to 7 feet. I grew from 5'4" to normal people height. But yeah, so I've been short my whole life. So yeah, I'm tall. I'm not Yoda.
We got this one. Why wouldn't you want to be Yoda? Let's not get into it.
I'm tall.
Cheat Code Travels Vlog POV. It rolls off the tongue. Big stage for the Cowboys. Is the show too big? And 49ers? No, it won't be. Okay. We've discussed a lot of angles and we could talk for hours. And dude, Vish is awesome. By the way, if you're finding us for the first time, there's a lot of Cowboy fans I can tell in the chat that are probably watching us for the very first time. I go on Vish's show. Vish has his own YouTube show. He comes on my show. And we just wing it, man. There's no notes. There's no nothing. I mean, I'm reading you some notes here, but we don't script this or anything. It's just all based on just wherever the conversation goes. Lockerius says, I mean, the mind, Vish, the mind of Yoda.
We understood. I was just messing with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Vish has an incredible channel. Vish, tell people where they can find your channel. And then, of course, if you're one of the people, 700 people plus in the chat right now, which is a great number on a Saturday morning or Saturday midday, If you've yet to like and subscribe, that would really help me out. If you hit like, it just helps the algorithm and more people can find the show. If you hit subscribe, you'll just be alerted every time I go live. I talk a lot of football, a lot of Niner football, a lot of NFL football.
Be part of the group of people that gets Larry Krueger to 12K.
That's right. We're 11,000 and change, and we've picked up like 2,500 subscribers in the last like 10 days to 2 weeks alone. So love doing this with Vish. Vish is the man. Seriously. Vish should be hired as a 49er analyst because he's that good. And so check out his channel, hit like and subscribe for our channel. We've talked about a bunch of angles on this thing. Team Cali just subbed. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Give me a wild card factor. Because you know the way these things are. We could talk about this till the cows come home. And yet there's going to be some factor that maybe we've yet to mention that could be a huge factor in the game. I'll give you one that I think is really interesting. And I threw it to you, I think, earlier. The Niners, even on the turnover margin or plus this year, 14-0. The Niners negative turnover margin, 0-4. The turnovers mean everything, but also Dak has turned the ball over a lot in the second half of the year, and Purdy's taking better care of the ball despite the fact he's a rookie. But what's your wild card factor? Do you have one?
Yeah, I do, but the chat is all over it. It is the special teams.
Ray McLeod?
No, it's actually the other side. John Bones Fassel is infamous for being Mr. Trick play punt, trick play on field goal. So you got to be on your P's and Q's for that. In fact, I think they got a fake punt off against the 49ers last year. It propelled their drive that I think ultimately made the game 23-14 or 23-17. They got a 4th and 5, I think, that they converted off of a fake punt last year. I don't remember that exactly. But so that would be one. And then they have the all-pro returner, right? Cavante Turpin. That guy is a game changer. The Niners kick return coverage has been quite sus this year. If there's one place, it would be that. And then the second aspect is on offense. It's the name I brought up earlier. It's Tony Pollard. To me, when he plays well, Dallas's offense is different. When he is not really involved, they're not really getting him the ball. Dallas's offense, it's pretty good. And so if they're able to get him going, then to me, it changes the entire conversation. Because I picked this game, right? 34-20, well, going away, blah, blah, blah. But I mentioned also that to me, there is some question marks with tackling him in the alley and just being able to bring him down in general. And you get one explosive from him, and he's really good. So that would be, I would say, kind of my two wild card X factors. One is Dallas's special teams with Bones Fassel's creativity and Cavante Turpin being an all-pro returner, and then Tony Pollard.
All right. I'm going with, as far as my wild card, I'm going with Dak Prescott running the ball.
Okay.
Dak Prescott, wow. I could see Dak running the ball on if the Niners play any kind of man, or if they play quarters coverage and they put the two safeties deep to give themselves help down the field. Like if Dallas, the one thing, I don't think Dallas can come out and run it on the Niners, but I think if they went up top and they completed a couple passes and kind of shocked everybody, they might be able to run after that, after they've loosened up the defense. And the other thing I think is if the Niners do play the either man or the two safeties deep in quarters coverage, I could see that means you've got two safeties deep. There's one less guy in the box. And I could see, the Niners have nothing but 4.5 speed at linebacker, but I could see Dak busting some runs against man coverage if everybody's eyes are turned, or against quarters coverage if the safeties are deep. If they give him an alley, I could see him extending a few drives with his legs. And that to me is the wild card factor. Dak to me is the wild card factor for the Cowboys. I worry a lot about his running ability. He's not the same runner he was before he had the ankle injury, but he's still plenty mobile.
He's not even the same runner he was at Mississippi State, right? At Mississippi State, he was this dominant power runner.
Yeah.
He played for Dan Mullen, right?
Yes.
Dominant power runner. I mean, people compared him to Tim Tebow before the draft. So that tells you what kind of a power runner Dak Prescott was, right? That was a legitimate comparison to him before the draft. It's crazy now. Like, look at Dak Prescott. Look at how prolific he's become as a passer. but people really did make that comparison with him. And yeah, his running, it's slowed down quite a bit. In fact, he doesn't really even run anymore these days.
Right. But the other one is Osa, the big UCLA defensive tackle, he's only about 285.
You love
but
him.
He's really a penetrator. He's a pass rusher, and he can deal some serious damage to you because he's got a lot of weight. I mean, I'm worried about Parsons, but I'm more worried about Osa falling on Purdy and causing injury. Luis says number one defense for the Niners returns in this game, 4 sacks, 2 turnovers. We also have this one. Glass City saying, show me something Javon Kinlaw and Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
I mean, Bosa I thought was really good last week, despite the fact he had no sacks. I love the way
that was Kinlaw's worst game since he's come back.
Yeah. I got to say this about Javon. I really like Javon. I've interviewed him a couple times. I just don't see him getting a lot done off his initial push. Like, you're not going to move him off the line, but he's not going to move past you to the quarterback. So he's kind of, I don't want to say he's like Hankins, but he's a 2-down guy, and he's coming off the field on 3rd down in any passing situation.
Right now he is, right? Right now he's definitely a 2-down guy. I mean, most defensive lines have kind of adapted to going for full pass rushers, right? All 4 pass rushers. Niners do it, right? They put Omenihu, Willis, Ebukam, and Bosa in there at times together. They go with 4 edge players, they go Armstead, then they also go Armstead, Omenihu, Ebukam, and Bosa. That's kind of their pass rush package. But the thing with Javon Kinlaw that I think continues to be understated, and maybe his knee will never get to the point, but the guy just spends every offseason rehabbing. And to me, that's where he's not had an opportunity to get better yet, because he's been focusing on getting healthy rather than focusing on moving forward and getting better. And I think that's where he still has immense physical ability, but I think it's so imperative for him to go through a healthy offseason and actually be able to train and work on his game, because I think that's when we would actually be able to see kind of his growth and improvement and see where he kind of ultimately is as a player. Or maybe his knee is so compromised that at this point, this is the best he can do, because he's always going to have to worry about getting himself healthy. And that's unfortunate, but there's still value to that. But to me right now, it's hard to pencil him in as a player, because the entire time he's been in the NFL, when he's not playing, he's been trying to get his knee healthy, which doesn't give him a lot of opportunity to really, work on his game and all of that.
Do you think it's interesting there's only one defensive coach left in the playoffs? It's Sean McDermott. The rest are offensive-based head coaches. Does that interest you at all? Do you have any interesting wisdom on that one?
No, not really. I think the quarterbacks that are left kind of says, and then the coaches, of course, as well, right? When you look at the AFC, I think most people predicted, outside of Jacksonville in the beginning of the season, because, people weren't exactly sure where Trevor Lawrence was thanks to Urban Meyer. But I think most people thought that the final 4 quarterbacks in the AFC are going to include Burrow, Allen, and Mahomes, right? Right? Did anybody think different? I certainly picked all 3 of those quarterbacks to be there.
And Hurts, maybe, huh?
Exactly. And then Hurts, right? He's the growth, but he is a top 10 quarterback for sure. Dak is a top 10 quarterback to me. I mean, in fact, if Dak wins on Sunday in San Francisco, he's going to become the de facto best quarterback in the NFC. He might already be it, but do you think it's also interesting?
Do you think it's interesting that every quarterback outside of Joe Burrow, and even Burrow moves pretty well within the pocket, but every quarterback left is mobile, has mobility as part of their calling card? Is mobility in an era
normal,
where
right?
Linebackers are tiny and there's more sacks from DBs than D tackles?
Offensive lines aren't as good. Do
you think speed is an absolute prerequisite for being a championship caliber NFL quarterback in 2023?
No, it's off-schedule ability. And to me, it's not synonymous with being athletic. It's synonymous with having feel and instinct and ability to do it. And then there is a physical capability to do it, right? But there has to be some sort of second reactionary play, because protection breaks down way too often in the modern NFL. I hear people complaining about the Niners offensive line, and I've stood by this. Nobody ever wants to give me credit for saying it, but I'll give myself credit. There we go. But I've stood by it that the Niners offensive line has always been above average, really, under Kyle Shanahan, besides 17, which was one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. I mean, the Philly game that they subjected CJ Beathard to take that beating, poor CJ Beathard probably took some years off his life playing behind that offensive line. But besides then, they've kind of had a good offensive line, especially relative to league average, right? League offensive line play is not good unless you're a Philadelphia, even a Dallas, or even a San Francisco. You don't really have a good offensive line. They're not that good. And so I think so much of it is that when protection breaks down, how do you avoid negative plays? Because to me, so much of the game is avoiding negative plays, having big plays on offense, and avoiding turnovers. And if you have a quarterback that can turn, what would have been coverage bust or protection bust sack 1st and 18 into 2nd and 8 because he's able to run out of it, or into 1st and 10 because he's able to run away and make a big throw and salvage the play, or even better if he's able to or worst case, right? Best case is he's smart enough to dump it and you move on to 2nd and 10. But if you have that, to me, that is the number one kind of requisite ability. And then I think people also go overboard in that. You have to be able to play in structure and within your offense too. That second reaction ability has to be something you fall back on. It can't be something that you build your calling card on as a quarterback, because you'll get figured out that way too, because they'll just keep you inside of the pocket. And I think when you look at all the quarterbacks that are left in the playoffs, now Purdy has the smallest sample size of doing this, but when you look at Daniel Jones, he, especially as his confidence has grown through the year, he's shown the ability to not only play on time within their offense, but also use his legs and move. I would say the one thing he still needs to get better at is playing on time within their offense in the drop back pass game, and we'll see that evolve. Jalen Hurts is good at both. Dak is very good from the pocket. Maybe leaves a little bit desired to be sometimes off scheduled, but he can do both for sure. You look in the AFC, Allen does both. Mahomes does both. Burrow does both. Trevor Lawrence does both. Yeah, absolutely. To me, that's the most important thing.
We're getting Mr. Luster says, you guys are the future of sports media. I can't even watch 5 minutes of mainstream sports media anymore. All right, Vish, let's finish with the picks for the weekend. We're less than an hour, or about an hour away from kickoff of the first playoff game. First of all, did you make any wagers this weekend? Because I've wagered.
No, I don't really.
You're not a wager.
Sports betting. No, because okay, I'll share something personal about myself. I'm a stingy guy. I don't like putting money on the line. I don't like spending money.
Okay.
And
that's good that you know that about yourself.
Yeah, but once money gets on the line, whether it's $5, $10, whatever, I just feel crappy on either losing the money, and the satisfaction of earning 10 extra bucks with putting $5 on the game is not worth enough for me to put the $5 on the game in the first place. $5, $10, $50, $100, you can talk about it, whatever kind of number it is. If I have $1 on the game, I feel like crap. So
this is what I wagered on this weekend. I took a 2-team teaser today, and I took the Chiefs, and it was a 7.5 point teaser. So I've got the Chiefs at -1.5, and I've got the Giants +15. Giants +15, Chiefs -1.5. Who are the winners? Give me your quick thought on Jags, Chiefs, Giants, Eagles. I think the Giants, I've said it before, I think the Giants are going to Philly, and tonight they're going to knock off the Eagles and put them away. I really believe that's happening.
Okay. So I'll go first, Jags, Chiefs. I think the Jags will play them tight. It'll be kind of a back and forth first half. You'll think the Jags have a chance, and then the Chiefs will kind of separate themselves ultimately and win the game by 10, couple scores. They'll win the game with a margin for error. Everman, the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter will be appreciating the season Jacksonville has had, the job Doug Peterson did, the season Trevor Lawrence has had. And when they're acknowledging that in the commentary with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, the game's over, right?
Right.
The second game, look, I'm not going to pick the Giants to win. I think Philadelphia's talent ultimately overwhelms the Giants, though the Giants are such a great story, right? First of all, their belief is through the roof. They're such a well-coached team. It's not just Daboll on offense. It's Wink Martindale and what he does on defense. He's fantastic, right? And Dexter Lawrence is playing his butt off, and they have a big sucker who doesn't get enough credit next to him in Leonard Williams, who's also kicking ass and taking names right now.
Don't forget about Isaiah Hodgins from Berean Christian High School, right?
Yeah, he's not doing much if Darius Slay says hi to him.
He had 100 yards last week. He's 6'4" with awesome ball skills. He doesn't have great speed, but if he's in the red zone,
Larry, having a 100-yard game against the Minnesota Vikings with that
true.
secondary and with Ed Donato calling plays is, look, no disrespect to Isaiah Hodgins, but
Donato got canned.
Right, as he should have. But anyway, I think the Giants will keep it close because they're that well coached. They believe in themselves that much. Daniel Jones is playing that well, and they play close games, right? Like the last time against Philly, there were a couple other things, right? I think there was a special teams blunder that made the score a little more lopsided than maybe if the Giants played a clean football game, how it would have been. But ultimately, I think Philly's talent just overwhelms them. Philly, to me, is the one team that, and look, their offense is going through some injuries, whatever, but when they just decide they want to run the ball on offense because of their offensive line and because of Hurts, you're not stopping them. You're not.
I know.
You're not.
They
really just don't do it all the time.
They got a great roster. They really do. They got I think them and the Niners have the best talent in football. I really do.
Agree.
Maybe Kansas City as well.
I agree. But then I would put Kansas City and Cincinnati probably. I don't know about Cincinnati, but I'd probably put Kansas City above them just because of the quarterback, both of them, right? Mahomes is.
Yeah. Oh, Mahomes is the best. I mean, Mahomes is the guy. I mean, Mahomes is, it's Mahomes is like every game you're watching of Mahomes, you feel like at the end he will have won.
Oh,
I mean, it gives you that Joe Montana type feel. Tontaray says, been a while since us faithful are this confident. Okay, so I have Chiefs beating the Jags, and I don't think it's close. I have the Giants beating the Eagles, and I do think that's going to be close. How about Sunday? I like the Niners to win straight up. I'll give the 4, and I just think that people don't realize how good Brock Purdy really is. And I think the 49er defense last year, I mean, both the Niners and the Cowboys are better than the two teams that played last year.
Yeah,
Niners are better, Dallas is better. But the Niners defensively last year were 19th in the NFL in takeaways. This year, the 49ers are second in the NFL in takeaways.
Dallas first?
I don't know who's first. Might be Dallas, but the Niners are second in takeaways.
Give me the score, Larry. Give me the score.
I'm going 31-21. 31-21 Niners.
Okay.
31-21.
Okay.
What about the other game?
I like that.
What's your Bills?
I like Cincinnati.
Bengals.
I like Cincinnati.
You like Cincinnati?
Even with that offensive line, I was so underwhelmed by. I've been so underwhelmed by Dallas or Buffalo's pass rush without Von Miller. Greg Rousseau comes to play every other game. Ed Oliver occasionally reminds you that he was a top 10 pick and he was really good, but there's no consistency to it. I thought guys like Jordan Phillips would make a much bigger impact in Buffalo's defensive line. I was underwhelmed by it. To me, Buffalo's defense is very sound, very well coached, but it's like the Niners defense from last year. It really lacks that strangling element or the play that the ability to make the big plays that really put you underwater. They're just very good at getting you 3 and out. They're very sound. They are well coached. They're well schemed up. They always have a great plan. And then Buffalo's offense, it's the most overrated offense in the NFL because of how good the quarterback is. The quarterback mitigates all these flaws. The offensive line is not good, and the receivers and the weapons outside of Diggs are not good either. Gabe Davis last year was sharing snaps with Emmanuel Sanders, who's on game day morning, and Cole Beasley, who was signed 3 weeks ago. What does that tell you about Gabe Davis's credibility as a number 2 receiver? It's not a lot to me. He plays well once every 8 games against a bad team. That does not get the job done. I think Cincinnati, even with those offensive line issues, their defense is going to do a really good job because they're going to have a really good plan for Allen. They're going to keep him within the pocket. They're going to do the rush 3 stuff they did to Mahomes, and they're going to play zone coverage, and they're going to play very disciplined, and they're going to give Josh Allen problems. He's going to turn the football over, and then I think Burrow's just going to do enough, and he's going to take a lot of sacks in this game, but he's just going to do enough, and they're going to win this game.
Is Cincy going to beat Kansas City in the championship game?
I don't think so, no. I think Mahomes finally gets his revenge. To me, this is the year of Mahomes.
You like so are you pointing towards a rematch of Niners Chiefs?
I am. That is what I picked.
Wow.
Before the playoffs, and I also did pick the rematch to go Kansas City's way once again. God, I hope it doesn't happen, Larry. We just spent all this time talking about my reaction to games, all of that. I don't know if my stomach can take another one of those.
Oh man, it's funny. People agree with you on Buffalo. Bomber T. Josh Allen has to do too much. That won't last.
He's the
Interesting.
run
You may
game,
have
he's the
swung
pass
me on
game.
Buffalo because I don't have a lot of conviction in that Buffalo Cincinnati game. But you're right. When I look at Buffalo's defense, that's a pretty ordinary front. Shaq Lawson,
Greg
Daquan
Rousseau.
Jones, Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham, It's Ed Oliver. And then Milano can be picked on in pass coverage. Edmonds can be picked on in pass coverage. Their secondary is a little banged up.
They missed DeMar Hamlin. We'll see if I know they opened up Micah Hyde's practice window, but they also do miss DeMar Hamlin. He played very well for Micah Hyde. And the one thing he brought that was different from Poyer and Hyde are phenomenal in coverage. They don't exactly come down and fit the run with a lot of force and aggression. They're both good at it, but DeMar Hamlin was a smaller guy, but he would come down and rock people in the run game. And I think they do miss his aggression and miss his tenaciousness in the run game too.
All right, man, that's going to do it. Once again, tell people if they are coming into this chat and there's a lot of Cowboy fans in here, hit like, hit subscribe. That will help me, help the channel. Also, Vish has got his own. You can find him on Twitter at Vish Kumaran. But Vish, tell people where they can find your YouTube channel on YouTube. What should they type in and search? Just your name?
Same spot, at Vish Kumaran.
Go.
And make sure you're liking and subscribing here. If you subscribe right now, you could be part of the group of people that gets Larry Krueger to 12K.
Let's see.
If I was part of those people, I was already part of the people that helped him get to 11K. I didn't realize I wasn't subscribed because I don't subscribe to YouTube channels in general. So now I'm subscribed to Larry Krueger, who's my only subscription on YouTube.
Really? God, man, now that's an honor.
I think I have one or two more now.
I have 11,542 total subscribers and almost 700 people in the chat. So if everybody who's in the chat is not subscribing and you all subscribe right now, we'll get to 12,000 before the end of the day.
And then you can put it on your Twitter bio. You can put it on your resume. You can say, I helped Larry Krueger get to 12,000.
Get to 12,000, and he appreciated me. There you go.
Oh, I'm subscribed to 3 accounts. I just checked on my YouTube. I'm subscribed to Larry Krueger, Niners Nation, and Croc. Look at that.
Look at you.
I think I've subscribed to all of them pretty recently, too.
Jedi says, hey, Larry, I helped you get to 100. Oh, man. I mean, that right there. An original. You're an OG. You're an OG. Hey, by the way, Cowboy fans, I had Brad Sham on about 3 days ago. The great Brad Sham, who's been broadcasting in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now the 2020s. He has broadcasted Cowboy football in 6 different decades, and we had him on earlier this week.
Tasted disappointment in 6 different decades.
Seriously, Brad Sham. Brad Sham's the man. So Bomber T says, hit that like and subscribe if you're a Cowboy fan. Check out Brad Sham. I thought Brad Sham was going to come in, fired up and saying Cowboys are going to win. He didn't sound all that fired up, to be honest. So, but Vish, we're going to let you get on with the rest of your Saturday, man. You're the best. Everybody should go to Vish's channel at Vish Kumaran. Sign up. Vish, when are you going live again? You going live today? You going live tomorrow after the game? When's the next?
Probably tomorrow. Probably tomorrow after the game, but I'm not sure what type of. It just all depends how I feel after the game too. Because sometimes I just don't have it in me to really express myself after these games. We'll see.
Alberto Soto, I just subscribed to Vish.
Hey, that's awesome. Maybe because of Alberto now, I have to stream after the game, but we will be back next week no matter what. Larry, I like this setup that we've done the last 2 weeks. We can do
me too.
The same thing. It's kind of the perfect amount of streaming for me too, 3 or 4 a week. Doesn't get me too into hit because,
Dude, you're the man. And G-Code Travels Vlog final hit here says, does Elijah Mitchell run like Floyd or Derek LaVille as running back too? Elijah Mitchell owned Dallas last year. The snaps in last week's game were 40 for McCaffrey, 14 for Elijah. I'd like to see that a little bit
I told
more.
you, Larry. You asked me, is it going to be
a little
80-20?
bit more Elijah?
I told you it was going to be 80-20, and then I told you Jordan Mason would get carries only to finish the game out. It's that 21 personnel, the versatility and matchup nightmare between Debo and McCaffrey. I think that's really why the snap split is so drastic. Elijah Mitchell looked good, I thought, actually yesterday too, or last week in the 14 snaps he got to play. It just
What do you have? 11 yards of carry, something like that. Hey, Vish, have a great rest of your Saturday. I'm going to pay the bills, so I'll let you out and get on with your Saturday. But phenomenal, man, and we'll talk to you on your channel. Hopefully, about a Niner victory, maybe Tuesday.
Tuesday sounds good to me. I'll see you then, Larry.
Peace, brother. There you go. The great Vish Kumaran, who is awesome. Really, really good. And his channel is phenomenal. So check it out. All right, let's get a couple words from our sponsors, and I'll have some final thoughts, and then we will get on with the rest of our Saturday and get ready to, I'm going to go down to the butcher shop and get a little pulled pork for, maybe a little pulled pork tacos, maybe 7 or 8 hours from now. That is on my to-do list. But first, more from our sponsors on the Krueg Show.
Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, call and make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Tony Casera and the good people at Casera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Casera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equal.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 7 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, you know, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh. goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it. Hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. Thanks again to Vish Kumaran, and follow Vish on his channel at Vish Kumaran on Twitter. He does a great job covering the 49ers. All right, final thought before we get ready for 17 hours on the couch doing nothing, ignoring our families. No, I'm just joking. I won't ignore the family. Oh, they'll be there. They'll be there. Sean Nataro says sausage is an expression. Yes, it is. Oh, here we go. Jason in the chat. To Dallas fans, before you talk too much, you might want to get a kicker that can make extra points. All right. So now people are having fun going back and forth. Niner Gang says, what about Sam's Club in Arizona? I could go to Dan Cochimilio if I wanted to.
Hey, Pasquale. Dan Cochimilio here for the Krueg Show.
There you go. And Sammy, or I should say Sam's Club in Arizona is where Danny gets his New York style Italian sausage. Okay, interesting thing. Kyle Shanahan showed the 49er players a video compilation, and I think this is really cool. It started with Niners Cowboys January 82. So I don't go back to the early 70s, but if you're an old hand, or an old head, I should say, you do remember Roger Staubach coming back against the 49ers in the playoffs in the early 70s. And that's where the bitterness kind of began. Then, of course, the Niners got the upper hand as Montana rolled right and found Dwight Clark, who beat Everson Walls in the corner of the end zone for the catch. The late DC, personal friend, love him. I loved him for years. Great, great guy. And then 1992. And I'll say that was the last Clash of Titans. That was the last time the NFL was really had that level of talent. Now, there's been some good teams since, but go look at the Niners roster in 92, go look at the Cowboys roster, and tell me that that wasn't the last true clash of Titans pre-salary cap that the NFL ever had. There's never been a game with more talent on the field, I would argue, than the 1992 NFC Championship game, which Dallas won because they played a brilliant ball control game and ultimately knocked off the 49ers and Steve Young. 1993, the Cowboys were in full force, and they did it in Texas Stadium, and it was an embarrassment. And Eddie D said to Carmen Policy as they walked down to the Niner locker room, this can never happen again. We can never lose to the Cowboys again. So what did the Niners do? They brought in Richard Dent. They brought in Ken Norton. They brought in Gary Plummer. They brought in Deion Sanders. They brought in Charles Mann. They brought in Ricky Jackson. They loaded up. And the 1994 49ers were a dominant team. Steve Young, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones, bar none, William Floyd, Ricky Waters, tremendous offensive line, Deion on the corner. Eric Davis made the biggest play in the 94 NFC Championship game with a pick six. Adam Walker had the second biggest play in the NFC Championship game with a forced fumble. The Niners took a 21-0 lead that day and held on against an all-time Dallas team. And no, that wasn't pass interference on Deion Sanders against Michael Irvin down the Cowboys sideline late in the game. That was fucking good coverage. So the Niners won it in 94 after the Cowboys won it in 92 and 93. And now here we are, 49ers Cowboys once again. Last year, the Niners had a big first half, ran the ball on the Cowboys and found a way to win in Texas Stadium, or in Jerry's World, I should say, our AT&T Stadium. And now the Cowboys roll in as underdogs, and they're trying to pull the upset. The Niners were underdogs last year and pulled the upset. Of course, we also have the 95. We can talk 95 if you want. I was maybe my greatest Niner Cowboy memory of all time was I was on a business trip. I was in Texas, my buddy Pete, the great Pete Kepner, said, "Man, you gotta come in. You gotta come in and we'll go to the game. We'll do it up of a big weekend. We'll go to the game. We'll buy some tickets." I said, "Pete, you got tickets?" He said, "No, we'll buy them." So we go out Friday night, Saturday night, all of Pete's buddies, and the Niners were 13.5-point dogs. They had Steve Young, but he was hurt. They were rolling in with Elvis Gerback. And I remember driving in and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to play this? Am I going to be the guy that sits there all weekend and says, "Yeah, you guys are big favorites. You're going to kick our ass. We're going to lose. I hope we don't lose too bad." You know, I was looking at an entire weekend in Texas of basically just getting, slapped around by my buddy's friends. So I said, you know what? It ain't going down that way. I don't care if I got to eat crow on Sunday. I'm going to come strong and say the Niners are winning this game. So I told everybody on Friday night, we went out, the Niners are going to spank you. Elvis Gerback, the champs are in town. The real dynasty is here. The Niners are going to win this game. Said it all Friday night, heckled all night. Said it all Saturday as we're watching college football, heckled all day. Said it on Saturday night, heckled all Saturday night. Now we go to Papado's, this awesome little seafood place. It was actually, massive seafood emporium in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And it was good. Papado's, really, really good. Had this great seafood breakfast. Still all of his buddies are talking shit. Oh, my God. Cowboys are going to kill you guys today. And I'm like, no, the Niners are going to absolutely wipe them up. What? You got to be crazy. We buy tickets, and believe me, late 90s, this was the hottest ticket in the league. I spent $395 and sat on the 50-yard line, and I got them right at the anthem. So we literally are walking to our seats when Gerback hits Jerry Rice, and he takes it to the house. And I just put my hands up. I'm like, oh, my God. Then Derek LaVille, right before halftime, gets a little dump off from Gerback right in the middle of the field. And he does a little Brock Purdy high stepping into the end zone. And it's 31-7 49ers. And I just turned around to my, and I got a Niner t-shirt. I got the Niner hat. And I started popping the t-shirt. I turned around and I just start waving to all the people in the section. I'm like, bye-bye. Good night. Thanks for coming. Go home. Nothing to see here. The champs are in town. And I just got beer and peanuts and crap. People. And now it's not a violent crowd. It's a very upscale crowd for the most part. At least it was where we were sitting. So no fights broke out. I don't get anybody jumping over stands, throwing blows, but I've got beer thrown at me, peanuts, all kinds of wrappers. People are throwing paper at me, and I'm just talking. And to the point where an usher had to come and say, "Sir, you're going to start a huge melee here if you don't shut up." But I was like, "Goodbye. Thanks for coming. Take a walk. 31-7. Champs in town." Oh, it was seriously one of my favorite moments. One of my favorite moments ever as a sports fan was sitting there at Texas Stadium listening to Donna Summer and disco music and watching the cheerleaders and watching the Niners with Gerback roll in 13.5-point dogs, and they spanked them. Absolutely spanked them. Now, the Niners would lose later that year in the playoffs to Green Bay. And Dallas, unbelievably, with that idiot Barry Switzer, would find their way into the Super Bowl. And only because Jimmy Johnson was that good of a talent accumulator could Barry Switzer win with Jimmy's roster. But that's what happened. Jimmy won 3 rings. That was ring number 3. They got it done without him. But great moment. I'm thinking tomorrow, 49ers 31, Cowboys 21. Niners are scoring about 35 a game. There'll be a little bit less in this game. Cowboys, I think, are going to score about 20. So I'm going 31-21, 49ers to get it done. And they will be hosting the NFC Championship against the New York Giants a week from tomorrow. All right, that's going to do it for us. We do have one. Do we have one more super chat that I wanted to get in here? We got one more here. Keena Turner and Hooch. I'll never forgive Mike McCarthy for 2005. He banged the table for Alex Smith, despite the consensus for Rodgers. And as soon as we took Alex, he decamped to Green Bay to coach Aaron Rodgers. Respect to Alex, but that was dirty. Yeah, I mean, I was in the 49er war room, and I'll tell you what happened there. And I mean, this is. I mean, I was friends with Mike Sullivan, who was the agent at the time for Aaron Rodgers, and I talked to him the day before. And basically, what happened there was that Aaron Rodgers and Mike Sullivan told the 49ers that Aaron wanted to play with the Niners and would take less to do so. And Tom Condon, who's one of the great NFL agents in history, read the room and read that felt like the Yorks did not want to be called cheap. And he came out and made a public referendum, made it a referendum on the relative cheapness of the Yorks, and said that if Alex Smith goes number one, he wants historic money. So I think the 49ers didn't really have courage of their convictions. I think they had a deal worked out with Tampa. Tampa had two threes and 2 5s. And I think all 4 of those picks were coming to the Niners for Alex Smith. And the Niners were going to drop down to 5 and take Aaron Rodgers. But what happened was Gruden and Bruce Allen fell in love with Cadillac Williams. They had coached the Senior Bowl that year, and Cadillac had opened their eyes. And they decided, you know what, we'll stick with our quarterbacks. We'll draft Cadillac Williams. The Niners took Alex Smith, and there was like a half hour between picks. And we were waiting for Mike Nolan to come into the conference room and tell us about Alex Smith, but he didn't come in. Now the second pick happens. He doesn't come in. Now the third pick happens. He doesn't come in. I mean, we're literally sitting there for over an hour waiting for him to come in and talk about the quarterback, the new franchise quarterback. When Tampa picked Cadillac Williams, Mike Nolan walked in like 25 seconds later and said, Alex Smith's our guy. So what I was told is that the Buccaneers backed out of that trade in the 11th hour. Otherwise, Alex was going to Tampa and Rodgers was coming to the Niners. Instead, the Niners had no courage of their conviction. They took Alex Smith because they didn't want to be called cheap. They had a higher grade on Alex Smith, but they really liked Rodgers. They would have made that trade, except Tampa backed out. If somebody tells me I'm wrong, that's fine. But that's what Mike Sullivan, the agent for Aaron Rodgers, told me after the draft, that if that trade had gone down, if they didn't take Cadillac Williams, they were going to trade that pick to the Niners, and the Niners were going to take Aaron Rodgers, and Alex Smith was going to be a Buccaneer, and Aaron Rodgers was going to be a Niner. But there you go. Between Mike McCarthy, Mike Nolan, and also, they just didn't have any conviction on either quarterback. And I guess Aaron Rodgers, when they told him to do this and do that in the workout, he's like, why? He was cocky because Aaron Rodgers is cocky. And Alex Smith is a little bit more of a rule follower, and he just did anything they wanted. And so they drafted Alex Smith. Alex Smith went on and had a good career. Rodgers became a Hall of Famer, and the rest is history. And that's going to do it for us. Hope everybody enjoys the football today. Go Niners. We'll be on tomorrow after the game. I'm doing a pregame for TalkSport in London. I'll be doing a postgame for TalkSport in London. Catch me tomorrow at 1 o'clock on 95.7 The Game with Lo Neal. We'll be talking Niner football from the Santa Clara Hilton across the street from Levi's. Stop by, say hello, listen to 95.7 The Game around the clock. And then I'll be with you afterwards when it's all said and done tomorrow night, either hopefully talking about a Niners trip to the NFC Championship game or talking about the offseason that lies ahead. But that's coming up tomorrow night after 49er and Cowboy football. All right, that does it for us. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Thanks for listening to The Krueg Show. Once again, hit like and subscribe, everybody, and thanks for everybody's support.
Never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one.